This episode of the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show is brought to you by Manscaped. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to announce that smooth sack summer is officially upon us. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're groomed from pubes to bum. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, you can make this season the smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off and free shipping when you go to manscaped.com/THPN. That's manscaped.com/THPN. We at the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show have been using Manscaped products for quite some time, and nothing measures up to the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. This baby's got everything from a dual temp LED spotlight. It's completely waterproof, up to 60 minutes of runtime, interchangeable dual head system. If you're like me and you need to stay on top of your bodily grooming, there's no better choice than the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code THPN at manscaped.com. That's THPN at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. It's smooth sack summer, folks. Get on board or get left behind.
The following production is brought to you by the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show.
Here we go, Talkin' Buds Leaf Show. We kept our promise. We said we would only be back in the off season when there was actual real life news to discuss. We don't deal in hypotheticals on the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show. We don't live in fantasy land on the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show, but we are back for an off season edition because we have a ton of news to discuss. We are coming off the draft weekend. We are coming off free agency weekend. A lot of people excited. A lot of people crying. So much crying.
Oh yeah, that is number one. That's the first thing that as soon as you start breaking up who they signed, who they didn't sign, who they re-signed, who they didn't re-sign, it all comes back to just the crying that's going on in this fan base. Oh my God.
Man, the crying over Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I had to sign off Twitter. I was like, I can't read this anymore. It's like, what do you people want?
Yeah, so let's get into it, and then we'll put our thoughts in it.
Okay, I've got everything kind of written down here. We're going to go through this in no particular order, but I did think we should start off with the biggest fish, Chris Tanev. So it's reported on Saturday that the Leafs have acquired his rights from the Dallas Stars, and then pretty much right out of the gate in free agency on Monday, it's announced he signed a 6-year deal at an AAV of $4.5 million. Brad Treliving has targeted Chris Tanev for a really long time, dating back to last year. This is one of the best defensive signings they've made in free agency in a really long time. This is the first legit partner Morgan Rielly's probably ever going to have in his entire career as a Maple Leaf. I've made a point in each of these signings where I saw some crying. I saw some crying for giving a 34-year-old a 6-year deal. But at the same time, you got to do what you got to do to get the deal done. And when I look at this, I think, okay, I'm not really worried about years 5 and 6. The years that I'm focused on is the 4-year window that is Austin Matthews' contract.
Yeah, you keep alluding to that, and I think you're bang on with that. That is the window, and then the conversation if he's going to return after the 4 years is going to happen 4 years from now. But it is the window, and what you're hoping with Chris Tanev is that you finally have a legit partner for Morgan Rielly. And it's clear that Treliving's been on him. He was probably calling Calgary every day leading up to the trade deadline. But the history with Calgary probably didn't work out. But yeah, you watch Tanev play in the playoffs. I know he's 34. I know some people were kind of crying about, well, if you gave him so many years, then why'd you have to pay him 4.5? But you know what? This guy's reputation is great, and watching him in the playoffs, he's just a solid player. And they've always been looking for that right-handed shot to play with Morgan Rielly, and they finally got one. So I'm just gonna ignore what's going to happen at the tail end of that contract. And you've seen what this team does with contracts that go bad near the end. They always find their way out of it. So you had to do what you had to do to sign a really good defenseman, and that right-handed shot you finally got.
Guy's a warrior. You can't have enough intangible guys with these intangibles in your
Craig
room.
Berube type of guy.
Exactly. And a guy that, like, listening to 590 pretty much all day yesterday, and guys who play with him are like, this guy, you're going to have to kill this guy to get him off the ice. Like, he's one of those kind of guys. And you and I talked a lot in our last few episodes there at the end of the season about what are they going to do with their blue line? And it's like they caught a big fish here. This is a massive addition. This is him alone is a massive upgrade from their blue line as a whole last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And just how many years have you been talking about right-handed shot defensemen? Like, it's like every year we're talking about a fucking right-handed shot defenseman. It's like, and he finally goes out and gets one. And I do really like how Treliving came out and he was just like, I'm going to upgrade this blue line through hell or high water. Yeah. I know there's holes everywhere on this team, and we'll eventually get into that, but he said he was going to upgrade the blue line, and immediately signing Tanev does that right away. So
100%.
Yeah.
100%. All right. Now it's time to move into one of the other defensemen they signed on July 1st, the guy who spilled all the tears in Leaf Nation. Oliver Ekman-Larsson signs a 4-year deal at an AAV of $3.5 million. He's coming off winning a Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers. You know, I think the naysayers, fans are upset because they think it's an overpay for a guy who's a 5'6" on a team. Yeah. And they're like, why are you giving this guy? I saw some comparisons to John Klingberg. I think that's
Oliver
a bit of a
Ekman
stretch.
Klingberg.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a stretch, personally.
Yeah.
Is Oliver Ekman-Larsson the player he was a few years ago? No, but is he a guy who's coming off winning a Stanley Cup and is an NHL-ready guy that you can plug in there? Absolutely. So,
I mean, he just went on a cup run. Like, you know, like at least he just went through something that none of these guys on this team have ever went through. And I mean, early in his career, he was a highly touted guy when he was playing with Arizona. And then he kind of just like tailed off. He had that brutal time in Vancouver, and then he just kind of popped up out of nowhere. And it's like, if you plug this guy in the right spot in your D-core, he can do something for you. But when you sign a guy like this, who is, he is a bit of a wild card. Like, we don't know exactly what we're going to get from him, but then the emphasis on Benoit and McCabe playing as well as they did at points of last season are just even more important. So that guy could be slotted properly, and you could use what he does best in your lineup.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Another guy who's got some offensive upside, and you know, they brought in Mark Savard to rework that.
How's the pressure on Mark Savard?
They brought in Mark Savard to rework that horrendous power play. I'm sure, like, he just gives them another option back there. I'm not sitting here saying that we're not going to have moments this next season where we're going to be screaming at Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Like, 100% we're going to. But at the same time, it's like, we're going to talk in a few minutes about some of the guys they re-signed. There's a certain defenseman that they gave $3 million to that I have way more issue with than giving Oliver Ekman-Larsson 3.5. So it just is what it is. They need defensemen.
Yeah.
They need defensemen.
I think when they were just like, there was a lot of defensemen in the same kind of category in free agency. Like, they weren't number one guys, but they're all guys who could slot in under top four. And I don't know. I think Leaf fans from the jump just decided this area of the fan base just decided that they're not going to like this guy. And then there was other guys who signed similar deals, and they were kind of looking around being like, well, why didn't you go get Sean Walker? Or why didn't you go get who I can't even think who else, but there's a lot of guys in that team. Zadorov. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see, but I mean, he's better than Connor Timmins.
Yes. He's better than Connor Timmins. It is what it is. Stop crying. Like, what do you want? Stop crying. I'm not saying there aren't things to cry about. There are definitely some things to cry about. But I just think in the grand scheme, if I'm making a list of things I'm crying about, Oliver Ekman-Larsson is not at the top.
No, but it is a wait and see, though.
Moving on to yet another blue line signing, your favorite signing of the day. They signed 6'7", 220-pound Jani Hakanpää. A 2-year deal at an AAV of $1.5 million. has spent the last 3 years with the Dallas Stars. I have never heard of Jani Hakanpää until yesterday, but from what I can tell from reading about him and looking at some clips on YouTube, the guy's a monster who at times has played like big, like he was like 18, 20 minutes a night at times for the Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
Steve Simmons reported today that he does have a knee injury, so we'll see how long that keeps him out moving into next season and if he can be a factor. But again, just more defensemen. It's Brad Treliving made no bones about the fact of what he was targeting going into this free agency cycle, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, and I respect that so much. Just actually saying something and then doing it. And like nothing was egregious. Like obviously people don't like OEL, but it's not like we completely I mean, some people think we did overpay, but you know, and then they go out and get another right-handed shot big dude who basically replaces all the people who are obsessed with Joel Edmondson for some reason. And yeah, I don't see the downside at all. Another right shot defenseman who's a big dude who's going to hit guys, clear out in front of the net. So fuck it. Like good signing.
We'll learn some more about the knee injury. Hopefully that doesn't keep him out. But yeah, I chuckled the other day. I literally was on the golf course and I looked at my phone and I was like, who the hell is Jani Hakanpää?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's 6'7", 222. All right, I can get behind that.
There you go. Absolutely.
This, of all the signings, is the one that I'm not going to say has me worried. Okay, it does. It has me worried. Just because I don't... You're going into the season with a goalie tandem of Anthony Stolarz and Joe Woll. Joe Woll, who I've ranted and raved about his injury issues numerous times, and Stolarz, who's still a young guy and doesn't have a ton of experience in the league. So I do think it is a roll of the dice. The upside, I haven't watched a ton of Anthony Stolarz. I just listened to what other people say about him, and he's tons of upside. Another guy coming from the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers.
Another big dude.
Yeah. So he signs a 2-year deal at 2.5. So it's like you're spending 2.5 on him and 3.6 on Joe Woll. It's clearly going to be a tandem situation. The fact that they're bringing him in, I know they were in on Markstrom, but it's just the Calgary Flames have just decided they're not trading with the Toronto Maple Leafs ever. So
yeah,
okay. To me, this is the biggest risk. I'm really nervous about this. Like, let's just group all the goalies together and have a general goaltending conversation. So you have Stolarz signing a 2-year deal at an AAV of 2.5. Joe Woll gets a 3-year extension at an AAV of 3.6. And then they sign Matt Murray to a 1-year deal at an AAV of $875,000. So you've got 3 guys. One of them doesn't have a ton of experience, but upside from the people who have watched him. And 2 guys who, when they're on, can be really good, but are both very injury prone. So it's a big risk going into this season. I'm not super comfortable in the goaltending trio here, but at the same time, it's like Calgary's not going to trade with them. You look at some of the other options that were out there, a Cam Talbot, a Larry Brossoit,
yeah, it's tough there was nothing out there. And to me, I feel the exact same about this goalie situation as I did the year before. Samsonov did play well, and he did win a playoff series, which was a factor in making you feel somewhat better that he was going to show up if he needed to. But you still weren't 100% comfortable with what they were going into last season with, and you don't feel comfortable with what they're going in with this season. And there's what can you do really? There's just nothing out there. It's so hard to find those goaltenders, those Bobrovskys, those listed dudes who are just the best goalies in the league. They can't get one of those guys. And they're just, to me, this is a flyer on a guy who hasn't played a lot of games, who maybe they saw what they liked out of him, and he's a big dude. And everyone knows that I'm a huge Joe Woll fan when he's in the net. I think he has what it takes to be a great goalie in the league, but the guy literally can't make a routine save without pulling a hammy. So it really makes you nervous. But I mean, how many years have we gone into a season not feeling good about the goaltending situation, and then just add another season to it?
A lot.
There's just a lot of question marks, but there's also a lot of question marks everywhere else too. At least, I mean, I don't mind them taking a chance on a guy who's kind of maybe he can't get past Bobrovsky, but he wants to find another opportunity to be a starter. That could happen. We've seen I know his career's over now, but look at Jack Campbell, what he did. Like, obviously, the guy sucked at Edmonton, but when he came here,
bought
he's
out.
extremely useful. So it's just, you see a guy with potential, you go to grab him, and you hope for the best, and you hope that your goalie that you just signed doesn't make a post-to-post save and pop a hammy. That's all you're praying for going into this season.
At the year-end press conference, Brad Treliving said that we need to figure out what's happening with Joe Woll and why he can't stay healthy and figure out if there's any corrections we can make on our end. The fact that they've turned around and given him a 3-year extension tells me that at least they feel like they've unlocked something, or they feel like if they change something, whether in his preparation or whatever, that they can prevent him from getting hurt. So maybe you're just throwing these 3 guys out there and you're hoping that one of them takes off and takes the reins.
I'm just picturing Matt Murray playing net. It's just weird.
Matt Murray. 2 years ago, Matt Murray had moments where he looked really good, where he played some games where he looked really good, but he's just another guy that, like, the wind blows and he's injured. Like, he just can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I thought his career was over for sure, and just knowing that he's penciled in as the 3rd goaltender this season is pretty wild. But
yeah,
I have no expectation for that guy. 0.
As
far as I'm concerned, they're gonna have to go and get a 3rd goaltender, because how could you have any? Like, I know Joe Woll, but he's still young, and I think they gave him that contract because you can't really give up on him now, you know? Like, he just got his push in the NHL, and he looked very good at times. You're just hoping that maybe your training staff or your sports science department can figure out what the hell's wrong with this guy.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's another season. You just said it. It's another season where we're headed in going, what is the goaltending going to be?
I think every year of this era, of this Shanaplan era, has been like that. It's like Freddie Anderson was a good number 1 goaltender, but they never had a backup. And then you were always looking for a backup. And then Freddie would run out of gas and he'd suck in the playoffs. And then post Freddie, it's been like, we're going to bring 2 flyers in and hopefully it works out. And for the most part, it's kind of worked out.
Yeah, it hasn't been a disaster.
You know, like, there hasn't been a season where it's like they didn't make it because they're goaltending. It's like they always just kind of piecemeal it together and they kind of figure it out with whoever's available. Like Martin Jones coming in and playing well. Like, who saw that coming? Like, I don't want to put it all on the goaltending. It's like, I know I've seen in the past that whatever they put together, it's always good enough to get them there.
Yeah.
So
all right, so we talked about OEL earlier and getting 3.5, and I said that wasn't my least favorite contract that they handed out. The contract that I scratched my head at was a 2-year extension for Timothy Liljegren at $3 million. Now, he was scheduled to potentially head into arbitration. So I guess they had a feeling that he would probably get more than that in arbitration. To me personally, that's a risk I would have taken to hopefully try and get him below that number, because I am firmly in the camp of, like, I am over Timothy Liljegren. I don't see it. He's had so many chances. He's never been able to crack the top 4. He got scratched in the playoffs again last year. It's like, I don't see him being a guy. Sheldon Keefe could barely stand him. I don't see him being a guy that Craig Berube is going to take a liking to. So I understand that, like, we talked about some of the defensemen earlier that they were in on, and then some of the contracts that they signed, like the deals Zadorov got for Boston, like, they didn't want to hand that money out. So they were like, okay, well, let's keep Liljegren as a right shot D-man. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. To me, this wasn't a priority to get him re-signed. I think it's still on the table from everything you see of all the pundits talking about, that they could still trade him and put him in a deal at that price. But at the same time, like, I don't know. I did not need another year of Timothy Liljegren.
No, I mean, it's hard to. I just try so hard not to, like, cry at everything they do. Like, to me, I'm putting my trust in Treliving that whatever he has to do, and they have to fill out their defensive roster. And I don't know if they're going to try and move him in the future or what they're going to do with him. But obviously, you look at it, it's just a guy you're sick of watching. He was a first round pick like a while ago now, and it's just, every year you expect a step and it just doesn't happen. And then he's scratched in the playoffs. He's even playing the most important time of the year. So I don't know. I'm not thrilled to be watching Timothy Liljegren play another season in a Maple Leaf uniform, but I also just watched Cody Ceci, a guy who I couldn't stand watch playing hockey, play big minutes for a team that almost won the Stanley Cup. So I don't know. Maybe something can turn around for the guy, but yeah, not too thrilled to watch another season of Timothy Liljegren.
I'll be genuinely surprised if it happens, but I'm going to stick with my prediction that I don't think he's going to be someone that Craig Berube leans on. Let's put it that way.
No.
All right. From my least favorite contract to my most favorite contract they handed out over the weekend, Max Domi signs a 4-year extension at an AAV of $3.75 million. Consensus was he would have got more than that on the open market. He chose to take a little less and stay here. Everyone knows that I am the president of the Max Domi fan club. I was all year. I absolutely love the guy. I love the quote after they hired Berube where he said he's exactly what we need. I love the video he posted of him as Leo from Wolf of Wall Street after he re-signed. I'm not leaving. I love how badly he wants to be a Maple Leaf. In like all this talk we've had for years about the core and the culture and these guys taking every last dollar. And like, it's so nice to have a guy who's like, I want to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. I'm going to take less money to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. You saw the chemistry with Matthews towards the end of the year last year. If they need him to play center, he can play center. I was very, very pleased to see Max Domi remain a Toronto Maple Leaf for 4 more seasons. Basically, the duration of Matthews' contract.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a no-brainer. And you just look at Max Domi's career. Like, he's played for Arizona, Montreal, Columbus, Carolina, Chicago, Dallas, and now the Leafs. He's a very good player and a very useful player, but he's also a player that has some limitations as well. And I just think in this point in his career, bouncing around and just finally coming, like you could see he loves playing here. So it's like, you know what, man? He just did the good guy thing and took the contract that no one else seems to want to take in this city or on this team. So he's right up there in my good books because everyone else has just decided that they want to drain every penny out of this franchise. And he just went, you know what? I'm just going to stay here because I love playing here. And I love it. So, and I think everyone else loves it. And I think him doing that is going to put him in a lot of good graces with people in the fan base.
Oh, we're going to talk about the forward group in a few minutes, but I wasn't going to. I was putting together the rundown for today's episode, and I'm like, I don't really want to go through like the Edmondsons, the Labushkins, the Samsonovs, like all the guys who left. Like, I don't think we need to go through and give our take on that, but there was no way I wasn't going to touch on the departure of Tyler Bertuzzi. You want to talk crying? There was so much crying when it was announced that they weren't going to resign. How can you let this guy walk? How can you guys? Tyler Bertuzzi's mid as fuck. He was mid as fuck all year. He was not special. I'm sorry. Anything good that anyone has to say about him is always a reach. Like, oh, he wins battles along the boards.
Things. Yeah.
Like the guy's not worth $5.5 million on a team that has the cap situation of the Leafs. It's not a make or break addition. I'm sorry. Max Domi proved to be way more valuable last year.
Way more versatile.
Yes. When Marner went down with the injury and Domi picked up the slack with Matthews, that instantly shot him ahead of Tyler Bertuzzi on the list of valuable assets in this organization. Okay. And like, I don't have to tell you, I'm sure you've got your own take on it as well, but I did not lose a wink of sleep over Tyler Bertuzzi signing with the Chicago Blackhawks.
No, I was really critical of him because the expectation I had of him going into last season was so high. From watching him play with Detroit, listening to other people talk about the way he plays, I thought we were getting a dog who was just going to be in the fight every single night and contribute more offensively than he did. At the end, he ended up having a pretty decent offensive season, not $5.5 million, in my opinion, but I just thought he was going to be like a dog, and just every night it's just, here's a guy who's going to stir the pot. And I just thought for half to 3/4 of the season, he was just out there. And he's not a great skater. I know everyone likes to say he wins battles. I mean, does he win that many battles? Like, I don't know. That guy with the puck in open space is tough to watch. I just thought he had a lot of limitations, and the expectations for him were so high. Everyone, remember how excited we were when they signed him, being like, this is finally the guy that we need on this team. This is the type of player. And
Shit
honestly,
disturber.
I didn't really see. I thought in the playoffs he did kind of show more of that, and he started like mugging Marchand and pushing guys around. I thought he came around finally, but I thought for 82 he was pretty. He was pretty not pedestrian.
He was not an impact player on a night-to-night basis. He just wasn't. Like, I'm not saying he was terrible, but he wasn't this guy that we all thought he was going to be. And he's not to see how upset some people got about, you're letting a guy like that walk. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, they're not losing an impact guy night in, night out.
No.
It just is what it is.
Yeah, he wasn't awful. He wasn't the worst player I've ever seen, but I was expecting a lot more out of him, and him not returning, he's not worth it. He's just not worth what you have to pay him. And he just doesn't bring what I just thought he was going to bring a lot more than he did. And he just fell short in my opinion. So Tyler Bertuzzi, sayonara, bud.
So now that we've kind of rolled through the free agency sort of acquisitions and whatever, you kind of take a step back and you look at the team holistically, and you're like, the goaltending is still a roll of the dice. The defense is unquestionably better. Up front, they still got a lot of work to do, man. Like, when you pull up the line combos on daily faceoff, it's thin. Like, it's for a team that has struggled with depth scoring and has like shut down offensively in the playoffs. They got some work to do, and they got some trades they need to make if they want to try and fix that issue. Because I just don't like, you look at the third line of Pontus Holmberg, Max Domi, and Kalle Järnkrok. It's like, oh,
dude, that's the exact same forward group they had last season.
I know. And it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
All
so
right. Let's now that we've gotten all this out of the way, and I just want to address the people crying about the signings and not getting any forwards or whatever. The way I'm approaching this offseason right now, because whenever the season ends, I'm really pissed off, and then time goes by. Like, it seemed like a year ago they got eliminated.
Yes,
the playoffs went
went forever. Yeah, holy
so
Christ.
So I just kind of recalibrate over that time, and the way I'm looking at it is, Brad Treliving is not he has come in here to fix a mess that another guy made.
Yes.
Okay, there's a reason why they're so thin. And I know there's only a couple days left of cap friendly, but while it's still there, just go look at the four dudes who. This all comes. Here we go again. It all comes back to the four dudes, man. You can go out. You can sign Tanev. You can sign Matt Roy instead of OEL. That's great, but I'm sorry. Like, you still have this exact same problem as you do, even if you fill out the rest of your roster with solid guys. How can they go out and get another forward? How can they do that? Who are they going to trade?
So let's talk about. I wanted to touch on Ben Danford. We'll talk about him at the end of the episode. First of all, as a side, fuck you, Washington Capitals, for shutting down cap friendly. Like, what the fuck is that? Yeah, what the fuck is that? That is such a valuable resource for everyone who puts out hockey content. So fuck you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. You know, you just hit on it. The who they gonna trade? It ain't gonna be Mitch Marner. That ship has sailed. I think we all kind of put it out there that, well, they have to. And you know what? That's actually not true. They put it out there when Brendan Shanahan, Keith Pelly, and Brad Treliving came out at the end of the season. They said everything's on the table, and we have to look at making meaningful change. And you just look at it, and it's like, you're not, though. You're not going to make meaningful change. This organization is petrified petrified to move off Mitch Marner. And you hear all the excuses. Well, you can't lose a trade. Or what if he goes somewhere and has success? I guess what? He's going to. He's going to. So you look at what the Tampa Bay Lightning just did with Steven Stamkos. Listen, that might not work out for them. And you can argue Jake Gensel versus Steven Stamkos all day long. But I have so much respect for Julian Breezewall having the balls to look at Steven Stamkos and go, thanks for the 2 cups. We're trying to keep our window open. We're not overpaying you. So see you later. Brendan Shanahan could never. Brendan Shanahan doesn't have a quarter of the stones that Julian Breezeball has to make that deal. So you're right. You look at the forwards up front, it's pretty much the same group they had last year, Sans, Tyler, Bertuzzi, and it just comes down to, can you 4 big boys actually make it happen when it counts? Because we know you're going to get your 65 Genos in the regular season. We know you're going to get your 100 points. We know you're going to do all that. But when it comes time in the playoffs to be big boys and do what Connor McDavid did, I know he wasn't the greatest in game 6 and 7 of the Cup final, but to do what he did and lead his team back, can you guys do that in the playoffs?
Yeah, I just hear all these people on the radio this morning being like, well, how are they going to add to their forward group? What are they going to do? It's like, what? Nothing, because they can't do anything.
No.
They got to make a trade. Okay, who are they trading? One of the guys they just signed? Because those are the only guys who are valuable. Like what are you going to do? Trade Nick Robertson for what? A bag of pucks? What? Come on. They have nothing to trade. They have nothing to move. Mitch Marner isn't going anywhere. Why would he? And all you have to do is just look at the team you just referred to, the Edmonton Oilers. Look at what they just did. I know they didn't finish the job, but they went a hell of a lot further than any team in this franchise has in 50, 60 years. So all the credit in the world to them being down 3-0 and coming back and almost winning the cup against one of the best hockey teams I've ever seen in my life. So you look at the way that team's built. Top guys making big money, expecting to do big boy things with mediocre goaltending and mediocre defense up and down. They have a great number 1 defenseman. They got the best hockey player in the world. They probably got the second best hockey player in the world. And then they had a guy we let walk out of here because we couldn't scrum an extra $1 million for him. Meanwhile, he's setting records for goal scoring in the playoffs. That team is built so similarly to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And what is the difference? It's just the guys in Edmonton actually get the job done.
Correct.
It's just these guys don't get the job done. They just don't do it. And that's at the end of the day, you can go and sign Tanev and all these guys and think about all the fantasy trades in your head, somehow convince yourself that Nick Robertson's worth something. But at the end of the day, it's the same old shit, man. They just can't get it done. And this season is going to be all about the guy behind the bench. That is what this season is about.
Can I just, I don't want to cry over spilt milk, but for fuck's sakes, you should have done this last year. You should have brought in a new coach and tried a new coach last year. You didn't do it. You should have looked to move off Mitch Marner before his no move kicked in. You didn't fucking do it. So now you're between a rock and a hard place. I ranted last year about putting the reality glasses on. Okay, I'm going to put the reality glasses on with respect to Mitch Marner. He holds all the cards. He doesn't want to go anywhere. I don't want to hear one thing that drives me nuts. I understand when you're like, okay, well, they can't trade him. It's hard to trade him. Basically, they could trade him, but it's hard. He doesn't want to leave. Whatever. I get all that. One thing that drives me nuts is when people are like, well, they're looking at an extension because if you can't trade him, you can't let him walk for free. Why not? Why not? That's just more caps. Why do some of you not look at cap space as an asset? Why can't you let him walk for free? Because I'll tell you this right fucking now. Mitch Marner can come back next year, and that's fine. Okay? He can come back, he can play out his deal, and we'll see what happens. That's fine. I think a lot of the fan base isn't going to be thrilled about it, but I think if he goes out and plays well, people will get off his case. If it gets leaked that he's negotiating an extension for $12 million plus, people are going to go fucking berserk.
Yeah.
Myself included. So if I were him, he clearly is not surrounded by smart people. That much I know. If I were him, I would come out right at the beginning of training camp. I would have a prepared statement where I would say, this is where I want to be. I want to win here. It was a dream of mine to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. I'm not concerned about what's happening with my contract. All of that will be settled in due time, and I'm focused on winning this year, and I will not be answering questions about my contract for the remainder of the season. And for the love of God, if you are going to have any contract negotiation, you keep a fucking tight lid on it, because I'm telling you, man, I wouldn't be, this sounds dramatic, but if it comes out that like he's looking for like 12 and a half or so, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets booed at the games. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
Yeah, it's going to be a disaster. And I think what you just said is very controversial. I think a lot of people would throw a spaz over what you just said, over the fact that, because I agree with you. Cap space is important. We've seen it with this team. It's been their biggest problem since they started signing all the deals. So I totally get where you're coming from, but you're going to have to fight a lot of warriors on Twitter over that take.
Dude, I hate that so much. It's like, well, you can't let them walk for nothing. Why not? Yeah. Why not? Guess what? Unless John Tavares is ready to take a serious haircut, he's going to get the Steven Stamkos treatment, and he's going to walk for nothing. The Lightning just let their fucking captain, greatest player in Tampa Bay Lightning history,
I don't even think you can compare Stamkos to Tavares either.
Okay, but if you want to compare him to Marner,
I'd be offering him less than the $3 million that they offered Stamkos.
But if you want to compare him to Marner, the Tampa Bay Lightning literally just let the greatest player in franchise history walk out the door for nothing, because they're like, we need that cap space to try and rebuild and keep our window open. And if Mitch Marner is going to prove once again this year that he cannot handle when the lights are brightest, then you're going to just say, okay, Mitch, here's and if you really want to keep him, here's an extension and not a huge raise, which he probably isn't going to like. So you go, okay, goodbye. That's it.
Yeah.
Because you can't, if you're not going to trade him now, you're not going to trade him in season. The logistics of making that work with the no move and the list of teams and all that is just way too hard to execute.
Yeah, unless they go out and they're in the toilet for some reason this year, but I don't really see that happening.
Yeah, so it just, I don't know. It's really frustrating. It's I look at what Julian Breezeball just did, and I have so much respect for it. Like, Brendan Shanahan should have done this 2 years ago. They should have looked last year before his no move kicked in and said the window is now to move off this player. No, can't do that. Because what if we're a little bit worse next year and it affects revenue? And I hate to be that guy, but that's the problem here. Like, if you look at the philosophy of why this is the way it is, it's because ownership doesn't want to risk the team being a surefire lock to make the playoffs every year. And they see moving off Mitch Marner as putting that at risk. So they don't want to do it. It's infuriating.
Signing him to a raise would be...
That's what I mean, man.
Would be something. Like,
dude, that's what I mean.
I'll give you the exact same contract you have right now. Like,
I have no faith.
But you fucked yourself by giving Nylander a massive raise. So you're going to have to match that if you want to re-sign him.
People didn't have the vitriol at Willie at this time last year.
Actually shown up into like, he played great in the playoffs. He scored big goals. Like, I know maybe on a night-to-night basis during the regular season, Mitch Marner's might be a little more versatile on what he brings to your team, but there's no denying the fact that, first of all, William Nylander just from the outside seems like a more likable guy. Like, let's just say that. Okay, I don't know Mitch Marner personally, but like, just from the outside looking in, he just seems like a more likable dude.
Right.
And he's also just shown up in bigger games, and Mitch Marner just does not do that.
No.
And what you said about the cap space and the trade, it's just like, there's so many different ways to look at it. It's like, you don't want to give away a guy for nothing. Because that just doesn't feel good, doesn't look good, it doesn't make your team better. Some people would argue that getting rid of him for cap space is nuts. But at the end of the day, it's just like, no one can disagree that this guy just comes up small in the big moments, and we're just sick and tired of watching it. So that's why there's so many different scenarios of ways you can get rid of this guy, because everyone's just kind of sick of watching it.
Exactly. I don't care how good they've reached the point, and you're here with Austin Matthews as well, quite frankly. Like, Austin Matthews scored 69 goals last year. Sitting here today on July 2nd, I don't give a fuck that he did that. I don't care.
Yeah.
You lost again in the first round. So it is what it is.
And he didn't take over any game or
No.
any, like, yeah, you played okay. You played well. You got hurt.
Yes.
But it's just, again, like one of the best hockey players during the regular season. But I just watched a guy we couldn't scrub $1 million for set a playoff goal record. Like, it's,
I know.
like, that's frustrating to watch. Like,
and you look at,
like, oh,
you're talking about some of the contracts that were signed yesterday. If you want to, I tweeted this out. I said, if you want to understand why Leaf fans are so angry, and I understand that there's the whole state income tax thing, which is a huge topic of conversation in the NHL right now. Sam Reinhart signs an 8-year deal for $8.5 million with the Florida Panthers.
yeah.
And we had to give Willie Nylander 11 and a half.
I know.
Like,
Yeah,
come
it
on.
hurts. Yeah.
Yeah, like, come on. And like I said,
that's another defensive piece. Like, that's another guy you could have went out and signed for $3.5 million.
Yeah,
to bolster your
exactly. Like, yeah. I understand the state income tax thing, but it's like that's a guy who's bought into a culture and wants to stay. And it's just, I tell you, man, if I'm Mitch Marner, and like I said, everyone around him has brutal understanding of PR. That much is clear. But if I'm him and I'm his camp, the last thing you want is for it to get out that you are asking for north of 12 million, because I honestly, I could absolutely see a scenario where he gets booed at the games next year. I absolutely could see that.
Well, that is going to happen. Like,
yeah,
if you think he's going to ask for less than 12, you're nuts.
But keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut.
Well, what's gonna happen if you come out and announce that it's done?
Oh my God, people are gonna go insane, man.
Yeah, people are gonna, like, you almost want it to leak if you don't want it to happen.
Oh,
because
people are
maybe
gonna go
the
insane.
noise could be so loud that they kind of start to, like, second guess themselves. If they just keep it quiet and all of a sudden they announce it, it's gonna be fucking pandemonium in this city.
So one thing I wanted to touch on too was the Nick Robertson requesting a trade.
He's our biggest trade piece. You can't get rid of him.
Here's what I'll say, okay?
Jesus.
I understand the frustration on his end, but at the same time, it's like, listen, Junior, like, go sit at the back of the room. If we find a deal that works for us, we'll consider it. I'm not going to spend much time worrying about your trade request. Every time you've been in the lineup, you've been so. You actually got a decent amount of playing time last year, and you weren't that good.
Yeah, he went through a stretch where, like, he was on a bit of, like, a scoring streak, but
yeah. So it's kind of like, yeah. Like, if I'm Brad Treliving and I get a phone call, in the middle of, like, one of the busiest weekends of the year that Nick Robertson is like, I want to be traded, I'd be like, I'd flush that call in 2 seconds. I'd be like, I'm not dealing with this right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
I mean, that's pretty far down my worry list, to be honest with you. It's like, the guy has just been a disappointment. I don't blame him for wanting to be traded. I thought he didn't really get a fair shake at the start, but at the end of the day, the guy's just a small hockey player who, when he's in the lineup, unless he's putting the puck in the net, he's not really doing anything.
Yeah. So the draft, did you catch any of the draft at the Sphere?
Honestly, no. I was absent watching the draft.
I thought it looked cool as hell. I thought it was awesome for an event that typically in the past, like, every year I'm kind of like, oh, I'm gonna watch the draft, and all the talking heads get you so fired up about, like, it's the draft, and then you watch it for an hour and you're like, this is so boring.
Yeah.
I thought the Sphere was super cool to see. The Leafs end up trading back to 31 in the draft and getting another pick, and then using the 31st to draft Ben Danford from the Oshawa Generals, 6'1", 190 right shot defenseman. You and I are not junior hockey aficionados, but everyone whose opinion I respect on junior hockey kept talking about intangibles with Ben Danford. And this is one thing they really liked about him was the intangibles. I got to tell you, I look at 6'1" right-handed shot D-man, and I'm like, I wish he could play in the lineup right now.
Yeah.
Odds are he's going to go
3 to 4.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
again, Brad Treliving had a weekend of saying, I'm going to replenish the defensive cupboards within this organization.
Also, don't forget that Kyle Dubas did not who did he draft?
Oh my God, Mr. fucking con man.
Yeah.
God.
That's why I said it earlier in the episode. You reference those things about why didn't they get rid of Keefe last year? Why didn't they do this last year? And we are assuming. I'm assuming that Brendan Shanahan isn't having his hands in everything Brad Treliving's doing, which I could be wrong. But this guy's come in here and it seemed like all he had to do was tinker with a winning formula here to make it better. It's no, he came here to kind of hit the reset button.
Yes.
And
yes.
and maybe it's taking a little bit longer than what people would like. And we thought the window was I don't know, there's a certain amount of window that they have and you think that it's going to close, but I don't know. This guy has a lot of work to do to kind of replenish this roster. Where you look at the disaster list that guy left behind with the contracts, the amount of dudes I'm watching in the playoffs who used to be on their roster that were traded for
that
nothing.
He just let walk.
And couldn't, we had to bend over and give these guys a zillion dollars, but we couldn't find an extra mil to keep Zach Hyman around.
We had to trade Mason Marchment for Dennis Malgin.
And I'm watching guys who used to be on this roster who sucked and couldn't contribute, and I'm watching them on other teams contribute at least something, and it's I just think Brad Treliving has just a bigger job than people think of trying to rebuild this roster in a way that it can win, and it might take a little bit longer than what people want it to.
I just have a couple rapid fire things here for you to close out this episode because I don't know when we'll be back. They actually released the schedule today and they're starting early October. I think it's the 8th against the Montreal Canadiens. It's a back-to-back. They have the Canadiens in Montreal on Wednesday, and then they go to New Jersey the very next night to play Sheldon Keefe and the New Jersey Devils.
They replenished the roster for that guy.
They sure did. We haven't been on since Keefe got that job in New Jersey, and I think, you know what, I was super, super critical of the guy. Still am for some of the decisions that he made behind the bench here, but you know what, the thing I'm really happy about with Sheldon Keefe is he didn't go running to Pittsburgh to be with the con man. He went and got his own job. And is off doing his own thing. Sheldon, stay the fuck away from that con artist. He'll stay the hell away from him.
Yeah. I honestly have no ill will toward towards Sheldon Keefe. I wish him the absolute best. I think he just was that was a tough rookie head coach job. I think it was just a little out of his league. I think he's going to be way better off with this experience behind him going into a new job. And I hope they make the playoffs. I hope all the success in the world to him because I know what he had to deal with here was not easy. And I think he just wasn't the right guy at the right time. So I hope him all the best. No ill will towards that guy at all.
We don't deal in hypotheticals, and this is kind of a hypothetical, but Nick Kyprios did report it yesterday during the free agency coverage that the Maple Leafs are actually considering removing the C from John Tavares and giving it to Austin Matthews. I already know.
I hate this. Let's all gather around the campfire. It's such a lame. No one cares who the captain is, man. I'm sorry.
I think so. Listen, in a year where they're PR isn't the greatest, and you and I both are just so tired of John Tavares. We didn't even touch on this earlier when we were talking about the roster. If you wanted to circle what their biggest problem is, it's paying that guy $11 million bucks,
absolutely.
Especially for one more year. So I honestly think it's it's a little distraction to put the C on Matthews to get everybody excited about a new captain. It's a philosophical turning of the page. So I'm actually in favor of it happening just because I'm just kind of tired of John Tavares' energy. Like, it's so funny when you look at the Edmonton Oilers, who literally got to game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, and you look at Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and they're beat up and they're devastated. They're heartbroken. And I just keep thinking back to game 7 of the first round. Oh, I mean, we're right there. We're right there. It's like,
the margins are thin.
These guys, such loser energy with this guy. Like, it's just do it. Just do it. And like, everybody and then you can say it's the turning of the page and it's a new era, and just do it. Just do it.
Yeah. Like, it can't hurt. It makes sense. I don't want to, like, I don't sit and think about this when I'm not on my off time. Like, I really don't think it matters at the end of the day. I think they can't go out and make a trade. They can't trade Marner. They can't sign another guy. So let's just think of something else that we can do that can somehow make this team better, even if it's something as small as that. But to me, it's a gather around the campfire, toast your marshmallows under the fire type of storyline. Like, I don't give a shit.
You've talked a lot in the past about punting on a season. I do think, like, yes, they've made moves to make their defense better and all this stuff, but I do think this season coming up is going to be pretty close to a punt when you look at all the money they have coming off the books at the end of next season and the chance that they're going to have to really reshape the roster. So I think when you say they can't make a trade, they can't sign anybody, they can't do anything, like, that's kind of where we're at. And you hope. It's funny because when they hired Craig Berube, the whole narrative in the media was, it can't just be the coach. It can't just be the coach. It's like, no, that's what it is. Like, they brought in some defensive help, like I said, but no, they are fully hoping that Craig Berube can squeeze more out of these guys than Sheldon Keefe was able to, and get Mitch Marner to not look like he's absolutely terrified come game 1 of the playoffs.
Yeah, that's all this season's about. I thought last season was a punt. I said it last season. I actually think the signings they made yesterday make their team better than they were last year. Like, TJ, we didn't know that TJ Brody was going to fall off a cliff, but even TJ Brody at his best, I don't think he's as good as Chris Tanev, and he's also not he's playing on his offside the whole time. I thought last season was a punt. I thought this season was a punt, and that's why, again, I got to give Brad Treliving a bit of a leash to figure things out, because not everything is solved by a trade. Like, it's not easy to go and just solve all your problems with some make-believe trade that everyone's trying to find and out of nowhere. It's like, no, we actually have to wait for these guys' contracts to end, because we can't get rid of them because they make too much money. They're not good enough for the money they're making. They have no move clauses. Like, there's just nothing you can do. You're handcuffed. You don't know what Brendan, and to your point, you don't know what Brendan Shanahan's saying. You don't know what ownership is saying. No. You don't know what their priorities are. No. So it's really tough to just sit back and, like, criticize every little thing. It's like, sometimes, like, this team almost has to buy its time to make the moves it wants to make. It can't just make them because they want to make them.
It sure does. All right, buddy. I don't know. I don't think we missed anything. I'm trying to just look through here and see if we did. I don't think we did. I think we caught everything. Again, we're going to continue on with our same off-season philosophy. When there is actual real news to discuss, we'll be back to discuss it. And then once training camp opens, we're pedal to the metal once again, like we always are. So we might not be pumping the content out at the clip we're going to come the fall, but hit that like and subscribe button below. Make sure you come on this upcoming journey with us.
Spread the word, tell your friends.
We really appreciate it. If you're listening to the audio version, do so as well. We'll see you guys next time.